Hey, welcome to another episode of the Fit Growth Machine podcast. If you're looking for inspiration on how to innovate from your passion and create the next big thing for your company, stay tuned as in a minute, Jason Rulo and I are going to discuss that. He's the president of Neptune Performance Products and inventor of the Neptune. As always, I'm Roisentul, your host. And before talking to him, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help e-commerce brands that want to scale their business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. Yes, after the iOS 14 update, now more than ever, we understand that it's really important to level up the marketing and design a solid strategy, as what used to work doesn't anymore. So if your e-commerce brand lacks a solid plan and professional team to increase sales, we can help the same way we have helped more than 1,000 brands like yours for over a decade. To learn more, you can visit bsrdigital.com, and you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Now, as promised, I have Jason here with me. Hey, Jason, thanks for being here on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. So why don't you start by telling the audience more about your story?
Well, so by trade, I am a personal trainer. I've owned a personal training business for about 20 years and have had numerous trainers and employees that work for me in that regard. But about 10 years ago, I started competing in the sport of obstacle course racing and doing so professionally, not at an extremely high level, but being an athlete, kind of implementing all the stuff that I teach my people, and then also trying to be a motivator, leading ahead, leading from the front, that type of thing. So I transitioned part of my lifestyle into that, realm of obstacle course racing, OCR, as we call it. And that took me in another course, which is my current business, or my other business, which is Neptune Performance Products, and my product, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, please tell me more about the Neptune. What do you do there in Neptune Performance?
Well, so I'll tell you a little bit about the story of how this all came to be, because like I said, I got into the sport of obstacle course racing a little over 10 years ago, and I was new into it, and it was a new sport. Tough Mudder is one of the most common names that people know, and also Spartan Race. And actually Tough Mudder, put on an event that I was in, and I did the regular Tough Mudder and found out that they had which regular Tough Mudder is like 10 miles and takes about, I don't know, between 2 and 3 hours to do. But I found out that they have a 24-hour version where you keep doing the same course over and over and over for 24 hours. And they started this in 2011.
Wow. I mean, obstacle racing, I cannot even run without obstacles. So I cannot imagine how that might be, running for 24 hours, you said, or something like that. I mean,
Yeah. Well, it baffled my mind because I was a runner. I'd done a marathon and I'd never done anything like that. I was like, this is kind of crazy. I think I might want to try something like this. So anyway, long story short is I signed up for this thing, not having any idea what I was getting into, and showed up in 2012. And there was one in 2011. And I saw a video of it. It looked horrible. It was freezing cold. They were breaking ice, getting into all the different obstacles and things. So I got into this race, and I show up. I don't know anybody. And I talked to Stu Smith, who's a former Navy SEAL. He's also somebody in the fitness industry, so I had ties to him. I asked him what he would wear, and kind of put together a gear list. And I had a client who's an ultra marathon racer, and kind of put together some food list. This is totally new to me. But show up not prepared. And the race was extremely cold. And during this time, I have never been, I've deer hunted, I've done all these different things, but I've never been so cold in my life because we weren't prepared physically. We were breaking ice. In any Tough Mudder, if you've never done one before, you're in and out of obstacles all the time. So you're constantly getting wet. So we had to wear a wetsuit and actually run in a wetsuit, which is not really designed to do. But we did this and I didn't make it 24 hours. The guys I was with, one of the guys got injured, and it ended up being that we walked most of the time. And to kind of paint a picture, once it got dark, it got really cold. And this is New Jersey in November. So it was not comfortable after it got dark. And, in a field of view, when you're running with a headlamp, you've got like 3 feet basically that you can see. So all you see is darkness and 3 feet right in front of you, and you're breathing, and it's really cold outside. So you've got like condensation blowing up in your face, and you can't see more than a few feet in front of you. It was nuts. In fact, it got so cold that when we went into what they call the medical tent and the aid station, they were both the same thing. There were guys sitting on the floor in front of these heaters that looked like death warmed over. It looked like something you would see out of like World War I, where they're like, "Are these guys going to survive this?" So it looked horrible to me. But all I can know is I couldn't feel my hands and I couldn't feel my toes. So they had like piping hot chicken broth. And we would pour it into our gloves and on our feet so we could feel our fingers and toes. I mean, it was insane. And I was literally doing, because we couldn't run because this guy was injured, I was doing burpees between and then jog up to him to try to keep my body heat. It was crazy. Long story short, during that race, I figured there has to be something out there that can keep us from getting so cold, right? Well, there wasn't anything. And of course, I'm stupid. I didn't finish the race. It's the only race in my entire career I have not finished. At 14 hours, it got to be very unsafe, in my opinion. And at that time, they didn't have a way to bypass an obstacle if you couldn't do the obstacle or you refused. Basically, you had to disqualify yourself. And so all 3 of us disqualified ourselves. We said, we're not doing this obstacle. We saw a guy fall off the obstacle. It was getting kind of dangerous. So we said, okay, we're going to disqualify ourselves. I stopped at 14 hours. I couldn't get my shoes off because I couldn't feel my hands. So being that uncomfortable, and of course, the fact that I'm stubborn, I didn't like the fact that I didn't finish the race. I signed up for the next year and went back. And I have been back every year since then. But along the way, realized that there has to be a better way. There has to be something out there. And there was nothing. Nothing that was made to do what we were doing. And in 2014, we had a bad way of it. There was a sandstorm where there were 100-mile-an-hour winds they moved it from New Jersey to Las Vegas, outside Las Vegas. And so we did the race there, and it wasn't nearly as cold. So it was, more comfortable, even though we had this crazy sandstorm. 2015, a lot of my friends, let's put it this way, there was 1,200 racers and 400 of them were knocked out of the race due to hypothermia. That's how crazy it got. So it was basically due to the way the course was set up. So we had all these people get knocked out. I'm not one of them, but I'm a veteran by this time, so I kind of know how to set the stuff up, how to wear the right kind of clothing. But long story short, all those people get knocked out. These are friends of mine, and I felt I could help them in some way. And I did have an idea that I developed back in 2012, but never tested it. So I'm like, got to help these people. I get home, I start thinking about it a little bit more, and a week later, I have deer camp. So I'm a deer hunter here in Missouri. I live in St. Louis, and I go deer hunting, and I actually bring my girlfriend with me, and she's never been hunting before. It's cold there, too. So I devised this plan, which is kind of based out of the idea of the Neptune, that I'm going to get a lot of people know what a hot hands warmer is, like the little chemical packs you put in your gloves to keep your hands warm when it's cold outside. Well, they make like a massive one for like sleeping bags. Well, I got one of these in my pack, and it's the only thing I have that could keep my girlfriend from complaining the entire time. So I literally duct taped it to her shirt and zipped the jacket up around it. And lo and behold, it kept her warm. So now I have an idea, and how can I make this and put this into something that can help other people. And that's really what it was all about. It was always about helping the people that I knew and helping others. And that's kind of, I transitioned myself from a personal trainer, just a personal trainer, and helping people in that way, to developing this core business of the Neptune that is basically a human thermoregulation system that does not require electric or batteries. So a lot of people have heard of heated vests, where they've got a battery pack that they use, and it's got these electrodes inside of it that kind of warm you up from the inside. Well, my system is a base layer system that's used mainly by athletes and people that are active, that does not require any electricity and doesn't require a battery to be recharged. It does use chemical elements in order to produce the heat, and those chemical elements can last up to 18 hours. So it's also waterproof, which is what makes the difference. You can take a person, dunk them in water, pull them out, dunk them in water again, pull them out. They can get dirty. They can do whatever they want. You can basically do anything to that person you want, and it will continue to work for up to 18 hours. So that's how I developed the idea. And then we could talk about a little bit more about, how I turned this into a business. But the idea was to save people that I knew from being completely uncomfortable, being knocked out of a race. To be honest, as an athlete, we're going to be out there in this type of stuff. It's just the way it works. The average person may not fully understand, but when you sign up for the Boston Marathon and you're going to go do this and it's pouring down rain and it's 40 degrees, you're going to do the race. That is not an option because you have been training for this for months. You're not going to say, you know what, it's not comfortable, I'm not doing it today. That's not going to happen. So what can you do to make sure that you don't end up with hypothermia, something like the Neptune's out there?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about because I'm not the one running, but my mom, she actually runs marathons. She's 60 or almost 60, and she runs a lot of marathons. Sometimes she has won in her category, and she's really passionate about it. And it doesn't matter whether it rains or if it's too hot, wind, or whatever, she will go, or even if she's injured. So I understand her passion.
That's
And
awesome.
I understand that when you're talking about this, I can feel your passion, right, about it. So it's great that from your passion, you can actually develop a business out of that. So I know you're talking like, the simplified version of it, but could you please break it down? I mean, the journey of the invention. You said how you came up with the idea, and then how long did it take from there? Since the idea there, you said, hey, I want to develop this. How long did it take? What was the process to manufacture? I mean, did you hire a team? How did you go about it?
So it to answer your question. So in November 2015 is when I decided, okay, I'm going to try to make this work. So I have the idea of how I'm going to, put this thing together. And because of how I want it to be something that can be utilized in a lot of different environments. Well, that's why I call it it's a thermoregulation system. It's not just a heating system. So it's the easiest way to explain to the average person without having it being in front of them is the way your car heating and air conditioning system works. You have cold, push button, air conditioning system turns on, and you have cold coming in now. Or you can flip it to heat, and now you have hot air coming in. But that's not the gist of it. You can move the air vents from pushing up on your windshield to down by your feet to blowing straight on you, and a combination thereof. And that will allow you to create the environment that you want. For instance, if all you did was load the heat in the system, in the Neptune, and it went all the way around you, it would produce a maximum amount of heat. And if you're wearing a jacket or something over it, you're gonna get pretty warm pretty quickly. Now, you can vent it by zipping down your jacket or whatever, or you can move the way the heat works. You can move them into different pockets. The system is set up so that you can adjust for different airflows. The body basically, by putting heat around the core, around the core area, is going to retain a lot of its heat. That's when you get cold, your hands get cold because your body's pulling all the blood out of your extremities and putting it back to your core for safekeeping, basically to keep it warm. So the Neptune the idea is that it's going to assist the body in keeping that blood warm. And therefore, if your blood's warm in the core, it will send some more blood out to the extremities so that your hands can continue to use and all that type of stuff. But it's adjustable. And it's made to be adjustable without being able to adjust heat, flipping a button or pushing a button or flipping a switch. So when I developed this, I said, we're going to have one base layer, one system that can apply to somebody that's cold or somebody that's hot or somebody that is going to go from cold to hot to cold or something like that. Because if theoretically, if you were a triathlete, and you're coming out of the water, and the water's really cold, you're freezing cold, you got to get on the bike, and now you got a lot of wind blowing against you. How can you stay warm? Well, it takes a long time to generate enough heat with all that wind in order to warm you back up. If you have a Neptune, as soon as you get out of the water, you take off your wetsuit, and then the Neptune's there. Yes, the Neptune is wet, but that's okay. You load it up with your heaters, zip up your jacket, take off. And in very short time, you're warm. Now, during that time, you will eventually get too warm, get hot. You can move the pouches, unzip it, and you got airflow coming through there. That's the idea with it, right? So I come up with this idea. Now, because of the situation that I want to be in with hunters and obstacle course racing, specific in this situation, I'm thinking of obstacle course racing, it has to be able to get wet. So how do I fix that problem? And everybody's heard of Gore-Tex and different jackets that have waterproof, breathable fabric. Well, I had to find one that would work because not all fabrics will work. Find one that works that can protect these pouches, keep them from getting wet, but still allow them to breathe properly. And so I did a series of tests over the course of November to like February, testing everything I could possibly test, making sure it works. Had someone I know sew pockets on the outside of a Under Armour type shirt, like a compression shirt. And then it was born. Okay, I had a prototype. I found a prototype or a series of things that I could make work. And then I had a few athletes that I knew that were doing another one of these 24-hour races. This one was in Florida, a lot warmer. And I had them tested. And we did series of tests to answer your question. It's series of testing from basically January of 2016 all the way to September of 2016. It was all testing various athletes. I had a test group. The whole thing was that the obstacle course racing community is pretty small, or at least at the time it was really small. And I had a test group, and we were testing the product. And I started the patent process before this. I just provisionally patented the thing before I put it out there in February. So I had to learn how to make it work. I'm not a seamstress. I had to play with fabrics and figure out which ones were. I mean, like I said, I was a hunter, so I had fabrics and stuff like that. So I had an idea what might work, but I had to figure one out. Also had to have, the provisional patent, get that done, which I didn't know anything about. So I had to learn about how to write one of those. Very simple process if you've got kind of a template, but that was just the provisional part of it. And then I had to find a company that would produce it for me and get that out there. So I was able to get lucky a few times. I got the right fabrics. I found a company that could do it for me. So this process of about 8 months long of prototyping and getting things together would allow me to then implement. And I had this company put it together. They did a fabulous job. They hit it on the mark. I was wondering if they could replicate what I created on a production scale. It was a small production scale initially. It's just 300 units. But could they do that and make it work and make everything durable and all that stuff? I'll tell you, they did a fantastic job. And the first product, basically from the time I started to the time it was delivered, was like 11 months, right? So it's provisionally patented. We got it out. We tested it at the World's Toughest Mudder in 2016, and it was born. But that was just the beginning. And anytime you start a business in a new industry for you're learning everything. When I started to figure out who I was going to have make this for me, I read the book Shoe Dog about Philip Knight and Nike, and how they got all this stuff and all the production, manufacturing and stuff in China. And so I learned a little bit about that from that, and then various other articles I read. Then I read the book Little Black Stretchy Pants about Lululemon and their vertical marketing ideas and how that company came about. And it just gave me little windows into the different industries and how the apparel industry and how this stuff worked. But I still didn't know what I was doing. Then after the initial rollout, the 2016 World's Toughest Mudder, I get the unit into about 150 people's hands, and it just kills it. Does fantastic, way better than I thought it would. Basically, over the course, and this will tell you, I guess I did a good job designing it, and they did a good job of replicating it. I have had less than 50 failures of the unit, of all the units I've ever sold. Less than 50 have failed. So from a production standpoint, the thing is bulletproof. It doesn't break, basically, if you want to look at it that way. And so we have this fantastic thing, this fantastic rollout, but now I have to figure this whole thing out because we got a product that actually works. It's been proven to work. And now I have to go into the patent part of it and, start this patent process because I don't want to make copying this thing. So I hire a patent attorney and do all that. So all along the way, I have had to learn e-commerce. I had to learn patenting stuff. It's funny because you hire a patent attorney and you pay them a ridiculous amount of money per hour. And they help bring your vision to in my case, the USPTO, and they put it all down on paper and they get it out there. And that was they filed the original patent stuff in like 2017, early 2017. And it took me 4 years to get the patent. A lot of arguing, a lot of going back and forth. And the whole thing is that this is what looks like if I just slid the paper over to you or slid the unit over to you, it looks very simple. And that's actually a problem. If on the surface your product looks fairly complicated, it probably is going to get more credence right off the bat because it's a little easier for them to understand. Like, hey, yeah, this might be something new and innovative. Whereas if I send you what mine looks like, you're like, how is this anything new? Because on surface it may not look that new, but you have to really understand how it works. And it took a long time for them to really understand. And actually, the pandemic helped. Because the examiner was having conceptualization problems of visualizing what was on the paper and how that would act like a machine, essentially. Because of what I tried to explain right there. It's very difficult to explain how it acts like a machine. But eventually, because of the pandemic, we were actually able, there's a part of the arguing process for patenting where you can do an interview, a phone interview with the patent examiner to try to get an idea of what his conflicts are, what his objections are to your patent, and try to explain why you believe this is new and innovative. And as a part of that, because of the pandemic, they actually allowed us to do essentially a short multimedia like video. We could show it to him, and it clicked. He understood by seeing a video, which is something I think the USPTO should be allowing anyway, because this antiquated drawing system that they have, it's good for long-term patenting stuff, but to get the examiner to understand, I think this process would help. But anyway, as soon as he saw the video, he understood. Now he knows what he's looking at. And finally, after 4 years of fighting with him, we got the patent. So that's been kind of a long process. I had to learn how to make those arguments. My patent attorneys helped out, but it was still me helping them make the arguments and going back and forth and learning about e-commerce, learning about the supply chain stuff, all of that.
I mean, that was a long process. It sounds like, but it's what it takes to innovate, right? And sometimes, as you said, when things look simple, on the outside, they don't realize that it's different. So yeah, it's a process that will take time, but I'm really passionate about these stories because you turned a passion into a business. So now we are getting into the part of marketing these, right? Because so far you said that, hey, I mean, I tried to find a manufacturer, then to do the patenting process. And then what? You have the patent, you have the products. What do you do then? How do you turn into, a business owner? What did you need to do from there to be able to sell units to people that you didn't know,
Yeah.
outside your network, say, or group?
That's the thing. And you asked about, basically it's been me the whole time. I knew this was going to be a process. So because I own a business and I have a fairly good business acumen. I knew I needed to know how this whole thing worked. I needed to know, yes, I created the product, but I needed to know how to do the e-commerce stuff. I needed to understand all the different areas. At least that's the way I don't need to run all the parts. as far as the business is concerned. But I need to, as far as I'm concerned, I need to understand how all these different things work. I don't need to know the X's and O's of how business accounting is, other than the bookkeeping, but I need to understand it, because that's, in my opinion, that's how you're going to run an effective business. So I knew this was going to be a slow process, because it's just me at the beginning. And then once I start growing, I could, expand out and all these things. So yes, I had to learn e-commerce. I had to learn, how to market this thing on Amazon. I had to learn the supply chain type stuff in order to get that going. So it was going to be a learning process from the beginning. I think a lot of entrepreneurs think this is just going to be something, oh man, it's a fantastic product and it's going to be great. And then boom, it's going to be out there and everybody's going to want to buy it. Well, it's very difficult to get somebody who's been, especially businesses in like the retail sector, where they're used to dealing with the big dogs and all these things, getting it out there, getting your information out there, getting your stuff out there. In our e-commerce type situations, it's a lot easier, because people see Kickstarter programs on Instagram, and they see, products that people are trying to get going. And it's a lot easier to get your stuff out there than it would have been, 15 or 20 years ago. But at the same time, as far as the way this industry works, supply chain type stuff, if I place an order right now, let's remove all the supply chain issues. If I place an order before the pandemic type stuff, it would take 6 to 8 months to get the order in. So I'm having to guess. In the apparel industry, you're always having to forward guess. And especially when somebody doesn't have any experience in it, how much do I need to order? How much can I afford to order? How long is it going to take me to sell those products? And it's a lot of upfront cost being put forth. If you're Adidas or Under Armour, it's no big deal. First of all, they have a lot of experience doing this, so they know about how much they can sell. And at the same time, they have a lot of capital, so they can, make all these products, put them out to sell. If they don't sell them all, then they put them on sale. Well, that doesn't work if you're trying to build a business and build it around one particular product. So you have to guess how much we're going to be able to make, how much we're going to be able to sell, how long it's going to take to get it. Then you run into the supply chain issues that we ran into. And unfortunately, when you're making, 500 to 1,000 units at a time, the manufacturing facilities are like, you know what? We got this order over here, 3,000 units. We're going to have to push you back. So I get an email. Hey, you're pushed back in the supply chain line. It's going to be another 4 months. Boom, get another one. It's going to be another 6 months. So these are the problems that I started to run into during the pandemic, is that because I'm a small manufacturer, they're kicking me down the line, trying to get things going again. So it's been a rough road.
Yeah, you're not alone. Definitely small brands and big brands are struggling with the impact that the supply chain had in them. There were a lot of challenges for every brand, no matter the size. Of course, the smallest, brands suffered the most, but big brands have a big structure too, and they are struggling a lot. I just wanted to know something, for those listening that are looking to or going through these processes as we speak, right? How do you get validation? Because you mainly said that you you did a batch of 300 units, if I'm correct, right? So did you distribute that, amongst the people you knew that were running the race alongside with you? How do you get the validation before you say, hey, there's demand for this product, let's make more?
Yeah. And this is something I learned from just reading Little Black Stretchy Pants. The guy who started Lululemon, Chip, basically went out and he found a focus group. I believe it was yoga, people that took a yoga class in the city of Vancouver. So my focus group was the people I raced with. And I knew that the 300, I selected 300 units because that was the smallest unit amount they would make. And I knew that I could probably get rid of that supply pretty quickly. But I basically knew that the initial group I'd probably sell 100 of them to this initial group. And this is going to be the most hardcore group of people. But there's two things that go along with that group of hardcore people. One, they're going to test it well for me. Two, the fact that I have been in this this community of group of people for a few years at this point. This is 2015. So I had done World Stuff with Mother like 3 or 4 times. Most people hadn't done it that many times. And I I wrote articles in one of the online publications for preparation for this race. So people knew who I was. So I had a little bit of a name recognition in this particular group and a lot of experience. So there was basically the validation in there was, okay, you're an athlete who has been doing this, knows how to prep for it, has been kind of helping us along by providing tips and things like that. And he says, this is going to be something that works. I also had a guy who basically, he took on a role. He's a good friend of mine, and we raced together a lot during those first few years. He took on a role, and in Facebook, which is how we were kind of getting people to know about my product and that type of stuff. He said, I'm going to help all the first timers, all the rookies. I'm just going to help them. So he had about 50 people that were brand new to this. So I had essentially 50 people that were veterans that needed it and that knew it, that trusted me, that said it would probably work. And we had 50 newbies. So they were the bulk of the first 1/3 of my customers. But see, because those people in this focus group were really hardcore people, they had a reach, social media reach, that was much greater because of the fact that, so if you look at it this way, if you're trying to market toward professional football or soccer players, if you're trying to market toward those and you have somebody who everybody in the professional soccer realm trusts, and he says, this is a great product, you need to try to use this. That type of validation is there because it's, just like getting a big time athlete. You got somebody who's kind of preaching the good word, and people use it. And that's kind of how it started. It was all, word of mouth type of stuff from a really select group of hardcore individuals who do this all the time. And it provided the validation that the product needed to branch out into that focus group. But the key was, for as far as I was concerned, we had to go to this focus group and to just people that are just outside of that focus group to get good sales. Like I couldn't like mass market to a bunch of different people until I was sure it was going to work and be durable. So we had to have a few years, at least in my opinion, a couple of years of sales and basically testimonials from those type of people that showed, hey, look, the product works. We've tested it so many times. Look, here's the example. Here's what we've seen, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, some things you said that I love is that you not only looked for validation in terms of, hey, they bought what I was selling, but you stayed there looking for their feedback on the product, because sometimes people forget about that part of things, which is really important. They say, oh, they bought, so it must be a really good product, right? I mean, and then probably it's not a good product because they bought thinking it was going to be one thing, but that it ended up being, I don't know, something that was not what they expected, or they had feedback for them and the entrepreneur didn't get it because they didn't ask. Or so that's the first part. And then the second part, that it took years, not days, weeks, or months, to validate things. Of course, it's not always the case for every product, but you're not the first one to tell me the same thing. So it takes time and consistency to do something right. So it's important, and it's something that people forget sometimes. And we all, want to get things out. I mean, out there, whatever we create, like as soon as possible. And sometimes the process is the process.
Yeah, and just for entrepreneurs out there, the best thing I can tell you, there's a lot of, like, I'm going to use the outdoor industry as an example. There's a lot of twists, nuances, companies doing nuances of other products. You have 5 companies that make an outer shell jacket, and this one does this, and this one uses this, but they're all outer shell jackets that keep you from getting rained on, right? It's the same product, just changed slightly. But when you try to do something that is industry changing, something that no one has done, and even though the big companies could do it, or maybe could do it, they've never done it. Why haven't they done it? So now I have to solve that problem. Well, on top of that, you're competing against them. But people have to, an entrepreneur has to understand, if you're trying to make something that no one's ever done before, it's going to take a while for that traction to gain, even if it works well, because the word of mouth is kind of slow. I mean, if you get lucky and something saves somebody's life and it gets on national television, it's probably going to explode. But those are few and far between products. Usually it gains a little bit of traction here in this group, and then this group tells this group, and then it just kind of branches out. But over the course of probably a few years, that product line then grows and becomes a big deal. If anybody's ever heard of the story of how Under Armour started with their shirts and their underwear, and how long it took for Kevin Plank to actually get people to buy in, he basically almost went bankrupt trying to find some sports teams that would buy into this thing that he knew would work, that it would be a game changer, and it did change the industry. So it's just, sometimes it's just, you got to have that perseverance and that dedication to understanding what the product is and your vision of it. And hopefully you got enough money to, stick with it. I mean, if Elon Musk, every single time he ran into a barrier at Tesla or at SpaceX and almost ran out of money, we wouldn't have what we had today, where the car manufacturers now all trying to make electric cars. Everybody in the early 2000s told Musk he was crazy. And they also told him he was crazy that he was trying to build rockets and get to Mars or back to the moon when NASA couldn't do that. They're like, this guy's nuts. He doesn't know it. Well, he had a dedication. Yes, he's one of the smartest individuals in the world, but he had dedication and perseverance, and it got him to where he is now. But it didn't just happen overnight. It took a long time for him to gain the traction that he's gotten now. And now everybody's chasing Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah. And along the way, what are some of the key lessons that you learned that you can remember right now?
Well, so the thing I could tell, and what I'd like to tell entrepreneurs is, you got to stay focused. You got to keep moving forward. You're gonna have things, as long as you've got enough money to keep moving forward. You got to bootstrap, do the things you can do. But it's that struggling time that you actually learn what's most important to you. And without, they say basically there is no salvation without suffering. You can't fully appreciate business being successful unless you have to struggle first, because that's when you're going to figure out, well, this works, that doesn't, this is cost effective, that's not. And you start throwing stuff out and you're like, okay, this is what I got, this is my core business here. So staying focused, keeping on the process and keeping moving, keeping the business rolling forward and keeping your vision. I think that's the other problem, is that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have they don't have a narrow vision. It's too broad, and they got to bring it down and funnel it down so that they know what they're doing. We deal with this with personal training clients all the time. They come in with this broad spectrum of goals, and we're like, no, we got to focus right here. We're going to stay in our lane right here. But having that patience to see through all of the stuff, whether it be the patent process or understanding, for me, and this is part of the thing, is that I realized as I went through this supply chain issue problem, that my goal during this whole thing is to help people. It's always been that. It's been to help people. I didn't create this to become rich, really. I created it because I saw a way to help people. That's why I got into personal training. I did that because I wanted to help people. Well, the best way I can help people right now, because of the supply chain issues and the fact I'm so small, I feel, is to pivot my business, pivot it from my own creation of it to licensing it. So I've kind of went that route. Once I got the patent and realized that the supply chain issues are going to be a problem for me as a small business owner, trying to build the product and all that kind of stuff, that partnering with a larger company who has better supply chain, who has all the connections that they need to have, that if my true vision is to help people, any way I can get the product out there the quickest, because of the patent time frame, patents are good for 20 years. So, I got to get this, I got to get it out there. And I realized at the beginning of this year that I needed to pivot the business to a licensure type of thing. And being willing to do that, being willing to accept that this might not be the exact vision that you were looking for or looking at the beginning, but being able to pivot because of the current business environment to make sure that you are successful. But on top of that, that you're, if your core thing is to help people, that's what you're doing is helping people and not just dragging this thing along.
Yeah. Many people, as you said, are trying to solve many problems, and they don't narrow down. And that's probably a key mistake that many people make, including me. From time to time, we want to solve many problems or help many industries, help many verticals. And sometimes the more you narrow down, the more you find the blue ocean. For those not familiar with the term, it comes from the book, or at least I came to know it from by reading the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy. Basically, it means that when you have a red ocean, it means that the market is crowded, right? And probably you will be one more there. But then the innovation doesn't come from inventing things out of the blue. As you said, it comes from, trying to narrow down and say, okay, what are the problems that I'm seeing that are possible to solve that are not being solved? And it gives you a framework on how to go about it, and it has helped me tremendously. And as you said, you need to. I mean, I think it's better when you try to solve your problems, and people around you with the same or similar problems. In this case, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's what you have done, basically based on what you said, right? You had a problem, you saw a problem, you saw people struggling with that problem the year later and the one after that and the one after that. You say, hey, maybe I can help them by creating something, and it ended up being what you created. But initially, you had no idea. You wanted to help them, initially staying with them during the race, and then from a different point of view. And now, by doing the licensing thing, from a different point of view, even more, right? But you still want to help people. You have a clear vision, and that's why you persisted throughout the years. And that's a key lesson that everyone should learn from this interview.
Yeah, I mean, the other part, the other thing that I can say, I made it sound like I've done all the work myself. I haven't done that. I had to have a lot of help. I had to have help in the creation of the initial product. I had to have help in the production process with this company as a go-between, basically handling production in Asia. I had to have help in the patent process. But it's these relationships that you build in the process of building these relationships and building the business that is really a key. So one of the things that I think all entrepreneurs need to make sure that they understand is that whether you're talking about sales with a customer or selling yourself to other businesses or developing those key relationships, you got to have those key relationships in all areas of your business. So it's really about getting out there, and some people are more comfortable than others in meeting with people and building those relationships, but that's a real key. You got to have people that can help you. And if you don't know people in the industry, you got to get out there and figure out a way to meet those people, whether it be on LinkedIn or actually out at trade shows. For as far as my business is concerned, getting to meet people and getting those connections, because business connections are a huge deal. My
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, for sure. This was great. I really appreciate your time. I think you delivered a lot of value to the audience. So I wanted to thank you for being here. So where can people go to learn more about you and the Neptune, your company and your products?
So the website, neptuneperformanceproducts.com. That's where you can see we're on YouTube and that type of thing. But the best way is just to go to neptuneperformanceproducts.com. You'll see the Neptune, and it's and basically what it does, and understand a little bit more about all of what we've been talking about. But if you Google my name, Jason Rulo, you're going to see me all over the place because I've written different articles and different things. It's always around my passion of obstacle course racing. But my one thing is that I've branched my life from personal fitness training to racing to Neptune performance products, all around my own passion for helping people and getting the most out of myself. So if you go to that neptuneperformanceproducts.com, you can check it all out.
Awesome. For you guys listening, if you go to the show notes, you will find the links mentioned, or if you're watching the video version, then in case you're not there at the fitgrowthmachine.com, you will go there, find the episode, and you will see the show notes with everything that you mentioned. So I really appreciate you being here. Thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. Thanks a lot.